The day began like any other in Oakwood Heights. I kissed my wife goodbye, helped my 10-year-old son Ethan pack his lunch, and stood on the front porch sipping coffee, watching him make his way to the bus stop at the end of our quiet cul-de-sac. We'd only lived in the neighborhood for 3 months. The HOA had its quirks, ridiculously strict rules, endless emails, but we were settling in. What I didn't expect was for Ethan to become the next victim of the HOA president's ego trip. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was Ethan. "Dad," his voice was shaky. "There's a lady yelling at me. She says my backpack breaks some HOA rule. She told me I'm not allowed to wait at the bus stop." In the background, I heard a high-pitched voice barking orders, demanding he put me on speaker. My grip tightened around the coffee mug. "I'll be right there," I said, keeping my tone steady, though my pulse was already quickening. I grabbed my keys, deliberately leaving my department vehicle behind. No need to show up with a badge yet. Some things are better handled face-to-face. As I approached the bus stop, I saw her, middle-aged, platinum blonde, precise highlights, and the infamous "Can I speak to the manager?" haircut. She stood with arms flailing, decked out in expensive athleisure, like she was heading to a yoga war zone, not a suburban sidewalk. And there was Ethan, clutching his Marvel superhero backpack like it was a shield against some madness. "Excuse me," I said, calm but firm, decades of police training kicking in. "Is there a problem here?" She turned sharply, her expression one of self-righteous fury. "Yes, there is," she snapped. "I'm Karen Whitfield, president of the Oakwood Heights Homeowners Association, and your son is in direct violation of community aesthetic standards." I placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, grounding him and myself. "What exactly is a violation?" I asked, genuinely curious what rules she thought a 10-year-old could possibly break with a backpack. She whipped out her phone, scrolling with dramatic intensity. "Section 12, paragraph 3, she declared triumphantly. "All items visible from community property must adhere to the HOA-approved color palette, earth tones and neutrals. His backpack is red and blue." I blinked. "You're telling me that my son's school backpack, something he uses to carry books, violates HOA rules because his color?" She crossed her arms and tilted her chin, basking in her authority. "Rules are rules." I looked down at Ethan, who held that bag like it was part of his identity. It wasn't just about colors. It was about control, and I wasn't about to let her win. "The bus stop is on HOA property," Karen declared, her voice sharp as broken glass. "And we have standards to maintain. If we allow one child to flaunt a garish backpack, it opens the floodgates. Chaos, declining property values, anarchy." I took a slow, steadying breath, fighting the urge to laugh. "Miss Whitfield," I said with forced patience, "my son is 10. He's waiting for his school bus with a backpack, not installing neon lights on the mailbox. This feels like a massive overreach of HOA authority." Karen's face turned a deep shade of crimson. "Don't you dare lecture me about HOA authority," she snapped. "I've been president for 6 years. I wrote the aesthetic compliance policy. Your son needs to leave the bus stop immediately, or I'm calling security." Security. Over a Marvel backpack. I actually chuckled. "For a child's school bag?" Ethan looked up at me, uncertainty clouding his eyes. I gave him a small, reassuring smile. "You're okay, buddy. You've done nothing wrong." Just then, the school bus appeared at the end of the street. I motioned Ethan to get ready, but Karen, moving like a human roadblock, stepped between him and the curb. "He's not getting on that bus," she said, her tone like ice cracking. "Not from this stop. Not with that backpack. Rules are rules." And that's when I decided it was time to end the circus. "Ms. Whitfield," I said evenly, "I'm not just Ethan's father. I'm Chief Jackson Reynolds, Oakwood Police Department. And right now, you're obstructing a minor's access to public school transportation. That's a serious matter." Her eyes widened, just for a split second, then narrowed again, her pride refusing to yield. "Being police chief doesn't exempt you from HOA rules," she said, though her voice had lost its edge. The bus pulled up with a hiss. I gently guided Ethan forward. "Go ahead, son." Karen lunged, grabbing my arm, her acrylic nails digging into my skin. "We're not done here," she hissed. I calmly removed her hand. "Please don't touch me again," I said, low and firm. No need to raise my voice when a badge and years of authority do the talking. Ethan climbed aboard, glancing nervously back at me. I gave him a small nod. The doors closed, and the bus rolled away. Karen stood her ground, nostrils flaring like a cartoon villain. "You've just made a serious enemy," she spat. "I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting tonight. We'll see how well your family fits, and once the fines start stacking up." I didn't flinch. "Ms. Whitfield, I'd actually be very interested in reviewing the specific bylaw that grants the HOA authority over children's school supplies. Do you mind pointing that out in the covenant?" Her mouth opened, then closed. "It falls under the aesthetic guidelines," she muttered. "As HOA president, I have discretionary authority to interpret those." I nodded, letting her feel the weight of silence for a moment. "Understood. I'll see you at the meeting tonight. I'll also be inviting the county code enforcement officer. He's been wanting to review a few of our HOA practices for compliance with state regulations. I think this will be a great opportunity." That did it. Her eye twitched, just barely, but I saw it. Karen squared her shoulders. "Just keep your son and his eyesore of a backpack off community property," she snapped before turning on her heel and storming across the street toward her pristine, HOA-approved fortress. I stood there for a moment, watching her retreat. This wasn't about a backpack. This was about power, and she just realized I was watching Karen storm back to her house. I knew this wasn't something I could ignore or outwait. This wasn't just a petty squabble over backpack colors. It was the latest in a long line of power plays. And this time, she'd gone too far. That afternoon, I made a few calls. First to our family attorney, then to several neighbors, many of whom had previously mentioned their own unpleasant encounters with Karen's iron-fisted interpretation of HOA policy. What I uncovered wasn't surprising, but it was disturbing. A pattern of harassment, threats, selective enforcement, and possibly legal overreach that had been quietly tolerated for far too long. By evening, I had a plan. The emergency HOA meeting was set for 7 p.m. at the community clubhouse. I arrived early, this time in uniform, not something I usually wore to neighborhood events. But sometimes a visible reminder of authority was the only thing that kept certain people in check. Karen was already there, holding court with her usual entourage of HOA loyalists. Her voice faltered mid-sentence when she saw me walk in, the polished badge and pressed blues catching the clubhouse lights. I greeted the room with a pleasant nod. "Good evening, everyone," I said. "I understand we're here tonight to discuss backpack regulations." A few chuckles echoed around the room, which made Karen's eyes narrow like daggers. "This isn't a joke, Chief Reynolds," she spat, dripping sarcasm over my title. "This is about maintaining community standards." She opened the meeting with a dramatic slideshow presentation, complete with a zoomed-in photograph of Ethan's backpack, clearly taken without permission that morning. "This is the kind of visual pollution we're dealing with," she said, clicking to a slide labeled "A Threat to Property Values." "We must hold the line." When she finished, she looked at me expectantly, clearly anticipating an apology. Instead, I stood, calm and collected. "Thank you, Ms. Whitfield, for your presentation. But before I address the backpack, I'd like to speak to a more serious concern." I placed the folder on the table and opened it. This morning, Ms. Whitfield physically blocked my son from accessing his school bus. She grabbed his arm and refused to let him pass. I have signed statements from 2 neighbors who witnessed the incident. The room went dead quiet. When I stepped in, I continued, "Ms. Whitfield also grabbed me, leaving visible marks on my arm." I held it up, showing the faint red indentations from her nails. Under state law, that constitutes simple assault, and interfering with a minor's access to education is a violation of educational access statutes. Karen shot to her feet, her voice rising with panic and rage. "That's absurd. I was enforcing HOA rules." I didn't flinch. "Ms. Whitfield, no HOA rule supersedes state law, and certainly not to the point of laying hands on a child. Furthermore, I reviewed the HOA covenant in detail. There is no provision regulating temporary personal items like backpacks, nor is there any language extending the color palette requirements to school supplies. I turned to the room. I'm not here tonight to press charges, though I could. I'm here as a resident, a father, and a concerned member of this community. Our HOA has strayed far from its intended purpose. So I've invited someone who can help us take a closer look at how our rules are being enforced. A woman, in a county-issued blazer, stood from the back row. "Good evening," she said. "I'm Inspector Davis, from County Code Enforcement." Karen's face drained of color. "This is outrageous," she shrieked. "You can't just bring in outsiders to our private meetings without board approval." "Actually," Inspector Davis said, stepping forward, "any resident may request a compliance review. And based on my initial findings, I've identified multiple troubling patterns, specifically regarding harassment, selective enforcement, and unlawful interpretation of authority." And that's when it happened. Karen snapped. "This is a coup. He's using his badge to take me down." She lunged for her HOA binder, the thick one with all the bylaws she loved to weaponize, and hurled it across the room. I sidestepped easily, but it struck Inspector Davis squarely in the shoulder. The room erupted. I moved instinctively, crossing the room in seconds. "Ms. Whitfield," I said firmly, "put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for assaulting a county official." Her eyes went wide. "You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president." I calmly read her Miranda rights as I secured the cuffs, the room watching in stunned silence. As I led her out, the remaining board members whispered urgently, and within minutes called for a vote. By unanimous decision, Karen was removed as HOA president, effective immediately. "You can't do this to me," she cried, thrashing slightly as we passed the community bulletin board. Her photo still smiled from beneath the bold text, "President Karen Whitfield. Do you know what I've done for this neighborhood? I built this place. I protected it." But her voice was already fading behind us. The next morning, Karen was released on bail, facing misdemeanor assault charges and a court order restraining order barring her from coming within 100 feet of my son or our home. As she stepped out of the courthouse in oversized sunglasses, a local news crew was waiting. "Ms. Whitfield, any comment about the incident?" the reporter asked. Karen hissed no comment as she shielded her face with her designer handbag. But it was too late. The camera caught every frame of her public unraveling. And just like that, Karen's legacy in Oakwood Heights was cemented, not as a tireless guardian of beige fences and neutral decor, but as the HOA tyrant who flew too close to the sun and crashed in full view of the entire neighborhood, not with a gavel, but with a backpack.